Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarLimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Joining us on this week's show is High Limit Pit reporter Tony LaPorta. Before we get to Tony, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in New York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or calling 717-292-8868. Now here's Tony. Tony, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Jeremy, thanks so much for having me, man. I've watched a few of these. I haven't worked all the way through your extensive library. But yeah, man, I think what you're doing is cool, and conversations are a good thing. So I'm happy to be on one of these with you. Thank you.
No problem. You're definitely on my list of people to have on the show. And it's a shame we couldn't tape our Eldora Media Center discussions. I think those would have ballooned up nicely.
It's funny. I just saw Alex Neaton, the PR coordinator for the Outlaws sprint cars, and I saw him at qualifying weekend for the 500 back in Indiana. And every time I see him, he jokes. He somehow references you and I in the media center at Eldora. Every single time he sent me a picture when they were out there for Let's Race 2, and he goes, "Feels weird you not being here, having deep, insightful conversation with Jeremy Elliott." And he didn't really say deep and insightful. He used some other words I won't use on here, but yeah, our back and forths in the media center at Eldora caught other people's attention. I just found out.
I call it educated nonsense.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun joking around. I mean, that's. I mean, I always knew who you were in the sport, but then when we ended up sitting next to each other a couple different times at Eldora in the media center, we just ended up having. I mean, you're a very funny guy. You got pretty good wit and good sense of humor about you. I'd like to think I have the same. So
No, you
I
do.
I think just naturally you and I found a way to sort of like start poking and ribbing each other. And yeah, those were funny days when I got to beat the Outlaws and share a media center with you. So yeah.
Plus, you're bigger than me. I can't piss you off too much. So,
Well, I'm bigger than a lot of people, which means I'm slower than a lot of people. And I think one time you might have come into the media center with like dunks on your feet or something.
yeah,
And I thought, okay, all right, we're dealing with a real athlete here in Jeremy Elliott. So
that wasn't me.
maybe it was someone who looked like you.
Yeah, well,
Feel bad for them.
too bad for them.
Yeah.
But I found out leading up to this interview that you're from Colorado and you
Yeah.
still live in Colorado. How does a guy in Colorado get involved in motorsports? Because it's not exactly a hotbed like Indianapolis or where a lot of guys are, whether it's pavement or dirt. Uh, or maybe I just don't know what's out there. But how do you get involved in racing?
Well, first off, I don't know. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. I did grow up in Colorado. I don't live there anymore, though.
Oh, okay. Somebody misinformed me, but you're
No,
from there.
that's all right. Yeah, you got to crack down on your sources. Um, I am from there. I live in Indianapolis these days because, as you referenced very correctly, it's the center of our world. At
Right.
least it feels like it. Um, but yeah, born and raised in northern Colorado. Went to college over in Grand Junction, which is on the western side of the mountains. And the really short version of the story, I guess, would be I really had no exposure to racing. I was not into racing as a kid. I wasn't going to um, short track races, NASCAR races, anything which we didn't have a lot of in Colorado to begin with, but typical T-ball, little league baseball, Cub Scouts, all that kind of stuff. And then had my mom's mom, my grandma Sherry moved after she retired down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and got a part-time job just to how a lot of retirees might drive Uber or Lyft today. She got a part-time job working at the theme restaurant NASCAR Cafe in
Wow.
Myrtle Beach. Yeah, and she got a job in the gift shop, which was on the backside of the restaurant. And I don't know, it was like I want to say fourth or fifth grade. I started getting these packages in the mail, and then they would have these little orange number 20 Home Depot
Oh,
race
okay.
cars in them, and just kind of got exposed to it from her. And started learning about this guy who drove them, who had the same first name as me, and he was winning a lot. And then it became a thing where her and I had a very close relationship. So she'd watch the races on Sunday, I'd watch them. We'd talk about them after the race each weekend, and went down to visit her. Got to go to my first race at Darlington in '05, and just got exposed to it through a really weird happenstance of a grandmother getting a job, and kind of exposed me to it, and fell in love with it as a kid, and started racing go-karts in Colorado, and just kind of became addicted to the sport after that.
So you, IMSA, I believe you were involved in some other things. What was your first job in motorsports?
Man, so I raced, and in Colorado, the karting we have out there is sprint karting, seated upright, pavement road course. So a lot of people maybe here in Pennsylvania, in Indiana, a lot of kids grow up racing, flat karts, lay down go-karts, and on dirt ovals. I didn't have that. We raced on left and right twist and turn road courses, and I raced those for 2 or 3 years. And then after I got out of that, because I looked like this at 15, so I wasn't very fast. I got handed a microphone at a club race I was supposed to be competing in. The race director at the time, really, really good friend of mine, an older guy whose son was still a bit older than me, but Kurt, the dad, his name was Kurt. He would help me kind of learn the sport and work on my own stuff. And then one day he's the race director for a club race, and I'm just doing this blah, 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 right next to him as he's trying to work all day. And he finally takes the microphone and he gives it to me, and he says, "This is your class that's on track right now for their main event. They're the last thing of the day. Take this mic, go up to the booth and announce it. We don't have an announcer, announce it." And I was nervous, terrified, had never done anything ever like that before. I was probably a junior in high school, and went up there and called it. And then it went decent. And the next summer, a big national tour opened up a region in Colorado, and I got to announce that series. But I did not make a dollar. It was we were all working for, kind of the growth, the benefit of growing it. So never got paid that first summer I announced go-karting in Colorado. And that just kind of put me on the track to get used, and become an option for other karting series. And then kind of, that summer of my senior year is when I started making money announcing racing.
So was IMSA your next kind of stopping point? What was after that?
No, and I should say that that first summer that I announced that regional deal in Colorado, we were doing a parking lot race outside of the Pikes Peak International Raceway where NASCAR and IRL used to go, and we were running a go-kart race in the parking lot, and a guy was there with a Legends car, those little 30s and
Yep.
40s coupes, and he was letting his Legends car be driven as the pace car for the go-kart races. And he was using the Legends car to promote his upcoming summer series in the infield of Pikes Peak. And he heard me announcing, and he was obviously fooled pretty well, because he comes up to me and he goes, "Man," I goes, "I'd sure love to have you announce our 3-race summer series." Like, there was one race in June, one race in July, and one race in August. And it was like little Legends cars, bandoleros, and like small little pro trucks, all on like a little infield
Yeah.
oval in the middle of the big track. So he paid me $150 a night, and I was a junior or a senior in high school getting to do that. And that was getting paid to announce. So that was a pretty big deal. But no, the pavement road course karting stuff put me into a I don't know, a series of connections that led to, it's all about who you know in the sport, right?
Yep.
The pavement karting series that I was announcing for, Rotax, the performance division of BRP, the folks that make Sea-Doo, Ski-Doo, they messed around in like the early 2000s and were like, "Why don't we make a go-kart engine?" Okay, that makes sense. And they have a national and international races all around the world, Rotax Karting, and Rotax Karting formed a partnership with which was Rotax Karting formed a partnership with what was then called the Mazda Road to Indy. And through my work with Rotax, I got hooked up with the people at Mazda Road to Indy. That was a ladder system designed to get kids out of go-karting and, work the
Yep.
ladder to get up to IndyCar. And they had a little internet TV show called Mazda Road to Indy TV. My connections with karting got my foot in the door there. There was a fan vote each year for kids that sent in submission tapes to be considered the next host of Road to Indy TV. It was a 1-year gig, and I won that fan vote. And amid some crazy circumstances, but won that fan vote. And so for the 2016 race season, I got to be the unpaid intern host of Road to Indy TV. And that put me into the IndyCar world, and IMSA came a year. Yeah, IMSA came like a year and a half after that. So IndyCar racing and junior Formula car racing was the first thing I did after karting.
So I have to ask you, how do you end up with USAC? Because you and I have talked about this. You ended up with USAC, I guess, announcing for 1 year.
So it's through the Road to Indy. So in 2016, I'm an unpaid intern. Again, what a lot of people will find, if you want to have a job in this world, it's really cool and it's really glamorous, but you do have to genuinely pay your dues sometimes.
Whew.
And through, whether it was that year of karting, I didn't get paid, or the year with Road to Indy, I didn't get paid. That sucked, but it puts you into these situations like the one with USAC. So it's 2016. It's my first year with Road to Indy TV, and we're in Indianapolis for the month of May. I was living in Oregon at the time, actually, which is a completely other story. But I'd come to Indiana to do the road course weekend, the Grand Prix weekend. The Road to Indy cars race on the same road course that IndyCar does, and then they have like the week of qualifying off, and then we would come back for the oval portion of the month of May. But during that road course weekend, I was good friends with Chris Wheeler. Well, I'm still good friends with Chris Wheeler, but back then, Chris reached out to me and he said, "Hey, you're coming to Indy this week for the Grand Prix." I said, "Yes." He goes, "All right, when do you fly out?" I said, "Monday, Monday morning after the Grand Prix is over." He goes, "You're going to need to change your flight, push it back to like Wednesday." Well, and I'm kind of like freaking out because I'm scheduled to be in Belleville, Washington that following weekend to announce karting up there. So I'm like, okay, if I leave Wednesday, I'm still going to make it there in time, but with a lot less time to spare. Why am I staying in Indianapolis? And he goes, you're staying with me. You're staying for the first, 2 days of that week. And I go, okay. So, we get to the Grand Prix and I see Chris and I go, "Why am I staying? What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, USAC is putting on this, they call it the Purdue E-Prix, and it's students from Purdue University build electric powered go-karts, and then they race them on like a little kidney bean shaped oval inside the infield of the speedway." And this thing, Jeremy, can't be a tenth of a mile,
Right.
from start to finish, but it's just this little tiny kidney bean oval, and it's all these mechanical engineering and electrical engineering students from Purdue that build these electrically powered go-karts. And he goes, "They asked me to announce it and I committed," but he goes, "I don't want to do it anymore, so I said you would do it." And I'm like, I have no idea what any of these things are or anything. And he goes, "You'll be fine, figure it out, whatever." And it was a 2-day deal. The first day got rained out, so they crammed everything into the second day. And it was just, being a dumb 22, 23-year-old kid, just picking up the mic and trying to be funny, trying to be a little informative. And I'm just kind of free balling out there, shooting from the hip. And the weekend went well, or the one race day went well. And I turn around after it's all over, and Kevin Miller and Levi Jones from USAC are standing there. Remember, it was Purdue University,
Yep.
but USAC took on the sanctioning of it. So
Correct.
how much sanctioning goes into an electric go-kart race for college students? I don't know, but
Okay. Keg
USAC's
of beer and they're okay.
right, exactly. USAC's got it handled, man. So I turn around and Kevin and Levi are standing there, and they were very nice to me. They said, "Hey, you did a great job announcing that for us. Who are you?" And I introduced myself and told them why I was in town and what I do. And they said, "Well, hey, our announcer, a guy by the name of Dylan Welch, they go, our announcer's probably leaving us at the end of the year to go to NASCAR and MRN and all this other stuff. What do you think about doing sprint cars next year?" And I'll be completely honest, Jeremy, and this will out me to a whole bunch of people that maybe I fooled thinking I know what I'm talking about. But it's 2016. I'm 22, 23 years old, and I don't know anything about sprint car racing. I know that Tony Stewart raced them because I read his book 10 times front to back. And I knew what USAC was because of Tony Stewart, but I didn't know anything about sprint car racing. And they're like, would you want to be our national touring announcer next year? And I'm like, yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that would be right for me. So I go home and I research it and I look it up and I watch all of Tim Truex's loud pedal videos. And I'm amazed. I've never seen a non-wing sprint car, and I've never, seen a Silver Crown car at Williams Grove. And I'm just drinking from a fire hose watching these loud pedal videos. And I'm showing my parents, I go, this is what I'm going to announce next year. These guys are going to pay. Look, they race 50 times a year. And later that year in 2016, Road to Indy TV offered me the job to return. And up till that point, it had always been a 1 year non-paid internship kind of deal. And when they made the point to offer me, a paycheck and the job for a second year, it was a pretty big deal because, frankly put, nobody had ever been offered that before me. So again, to make a long story a little bit shorter, I end up re-signing with Road to Indy TV. USAC and me never had good communication. And for the next couple of years, I would pass Kevin at like the Rolex 24 at Daytona, or I'd see Levi. And whenever I was looking for work, they had a guy, Sean Buckley,
Right.
Chet Christner, Rob Klepper. And then the other half of the time I'd pass them and they'd be looking to bring me on and commit to a full schedule, all the Silver Crown, all the midget, and all the sprint car races over 100 nights a year. And I'd say, well, I've got IMSA or I've got Road to Indy. Can I do 70 or 80% of the schedule? And they were very, nope, you're either in
You're
or you're
USAC.
not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so for the next, 17, 18, 19, 20, for the next 4 years, we just kind of keep doing that every couple of months, every couple of years, talking to each other, but it never worked out. So, yeah, it was a really weird kind of way to meet Kevin and Levi at USAC that way, but it was cool. It was definitely cool.
How does it end up working then?
Um, oh man, it's 2020.
COVID.
COVID. Yeah, of course, COVID kind of has the world all messed up, and not COVID doesn't really affect my situation, but I had been Mazda had left the Road to Indy. They pulled out of sponsoring the Road to Indy, but Mazda has a MX-5 Cup, just like the MX-5 Roadster you can buy and zip all around town in. They race those, and it's some of the best racing I've ever seen. It's really something I encourage people to check out, the Global MX-5 Cup, because they're all these spec stock, like 130 horsepower, little just bees running around these road courses, and they're packed up tight. It's awesome. I was their announcer, their play-by-play guy, and I did that from, I think, 17, 18, 19, and I was doing it in 20. And Mazda was going through some changes, and again, at the risk of airing out a bunch of dirty laundry and sounding like I'm just talking crap on people, some of the people that came into the new managerial positions at Mazda, just bluntly, were not fans of mine. And that happens all the time.
Mhm.
Big major corporations have shifts in their marketing departments. And if the guy that leaves was a big fan of motorsport, and the guy that comes in to run marketing for Target isn't a motorsports fan anymore, Scott Dixon loses his millions of
Right.
dollars a year sponsorship. And that's what happened to me. The guys that came in at Mazda, or the guy that came in at Mazda, was not a fan. And just very bluntly, I'm sitting in the Austin Bergstrom Airport after doing some video work for a road course team that had been racing at Coda. He just calls me, and just how it happens in the business all the time, just goes, "Oh yeah, you won't be, continuing with us next year. So hope to see you at the track." And yeah, I thought that was great. How subtle. But I'm devastated because I loved the series and I loved the job and I loved what it let me do. And like out of a movie, I'm on the plane back to Indianapolis, and I just whip out my phone and I'm like, all right, I got to figure out next year for me. Very similar to what I imagine drivers feel like when they get kind of tossed into silly season unwillingly. Um, I pull out my phone, I text Levi Jones just randomly. It's like middle of October or something in 2020. And I just texted him. I said, hey, and I hadn't talked to Levi in months, maybe over a year. And I said, hey man, I know we've kind of always danced around, working together. I said, but the biggest issue has always been my availability. I said, I'm now in a position with work. I didn't tell him I'd just been fired, but I said, I'm now in a position with work where I'm prepared to commit 100% to your guys' schedule, whatever, whenever, however you need me, I'm in. And I just sent that, hoping he might go, oh yeah, we could use you here, we could use there. Then he got back to me pretty quickly, and he goes, he basically just said, all right, let's talk soon. He was in the middle of a terrible, COVID had affected him. He was terribly sick at the end of 2020, if I remember. He was like locked in the family's basement. He was running a temperature of like 110 degrees. He was terrible. But through all of it, he stayed in touch with me, which I was grateful for. And we talked, and he let me in on some information. Their previous announcer, Rob Klepper, was stepping away and from USAC full time. He was still
Right.
broadcasting races, but he was stepping away from the 110 nights a year with USAC. And he, Levi and I just basically had a very quick discussion. And I actually thought it was him asking me to help out with like video production. And we met at Big Woods on Main Street and Speedway, like in the end of December, or maybe it was the middle of January. It was great. The time frame was just crazy, but I didn't even know he was offering it to me until the very end of the conversation, where he just kind of goes, well, are you interested in calling those races? And I thought it was a joke. I was so interested, Jeremy, and I wanted to do it so bad. I didn't even ask him what it paid. I just said, yes, I'm in. And, that goes to show you, I mean, if you don't even care about what it pays, then you must really want to do it. So, 2021, we worked it out super late in the winter. And he said, our normal guy, Rob, is leaving. Levi had kind of dreams, aspirations of keeping Pat Sullivan on the PA and having a flow only guy. And we tried that for a little bit, but it didn't really work. And so 2021, it was just kind of a marriage or a perfect storm of scenarios where their current guy, Rob Klepper, was leaving. They needed a guy pretty badly. I needed the work, and they knew I was cheap. So, it was just one of those kind of crazy scenario storms that worked out in my favor.
You may want to start working on the money end of this thing. You're not
Yeah,
very good at it.
no, no, yeah, no, you jump at any opportunity you can, and nobody does this, yourself included, the drivers.
Right.
Nobody does this to get rich. You do it because you love it, but yeah, you do find yourself sometimes in situations, and this isn't to say that USAC didn't pay me fairly. I think they did. It was just comical that somebody asked me, "Hey, congrats on the job. What are you making?" And I was like, "I'll get back to you on that."
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm making a great time is what I'm making. So, but yeah, that was a cool year. It was tough because I had already committed to IMSA to be their public address announcer for like my 5th year or something. And IMSA is a NASCAR property. They're very ironclad. They would every year have me sign an 8 or 9 page talent agreement. And in that talent agreement, it boldly, explicitly states if contractor, me, should do any work similar to the work he's providing for IMSA outside of IMSA. I'm getting the legal wording of it all wrong probably, but basically the talent agreement read, if you go to do anything like what you're doing for us,
Right.
announcing, and you don't get our written consent before you go do it, you can be dropped from your contract, no problem with us, and you're out of your IMSA employment. So I just committed to IMSA. I wanted this USAC thing really badly, so I had to have these. It was pretty tense. There were moments where we weren't sure how to play it. We didn't know. We wanted to do Bubba in February, the first weekends of
Right.
USAC, and I had to do Rolex in January at Daytona for IMSA. And so one of the things that really bit me in 2021 was nobody knew there was going to be a new announcer when the USAC season started. Nobody knew Rob Klepper wasn't going to be in the booth. And that was deliberately done because me, and I don't want to say my camp because I don't really have a camp, but me and the people that I trust to make these decisions with me, we kind of all agreed on get through Daytona, have your discussions at Daytona with the IMSA people, and don't blow this USAC thing up in January before you can even have a discussion with IMSA. So we kept it super, super quiet. I get to Daytona. I have great discussions with John Doonan, the president of IMSA, one of the best men in the world of motorsports I've ever met. And he says, yep, you're fine. You can do it. Absolutely no problem. Well, now it's like 2 weeks till Florida, and it's pretty much too late to make a big commotion about the announcer changing. And we don't really even think it's that necessary. I mean, who cares about the announcer? And and yeah, and we found out we found out the hard way that not letting USAC's very, very faithful fan base know there was going to be a change, not letting them know that was a problem. So I get through Daytona, we've kept it quiet that I'm doing USAC, and we roll into Florida and we go up live on Flow for the first time, and people are expecting to hear Rob Klepper. They're expecting to hear Pat Sullivan maybe over the public address system, and they don't. They hear me, a guy that they didn't know, and they soon found out didn't know everything about dirt racing himself. So I know that's a branch off of your original question as to
Oh,
how
don't
did it.
worry, I'm coming to that.
Yeah, but yeah, the USAC thing worked out because they needed a guy, I needed work, and all the right doors opened, at the right time.
It didn't work out.
No.
Um, basically from the start. Now, obviously, I learned this in the media center at Eldora over the last year or two. And what happened? Was it just your style didn't grow on the USAC crowd? Were you just a little too green for this moment? Which, hey, that happens to athletes. What was it that didn't work out at USAC, and how do you end up out of USAC?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I don't think it was a style thing necessarily. I mean, there were little things. I mean, I had people. Well, I'll work chronologically. The Florida swing in Bubba Raceway Park in the first 2 weekends, midgets the first weekend, sprint cars the second weekend start. And I'll take blame. I will be the first to admit that I jumped into a pool that I thought was like, 6 feet deep, and I'm 6'3". So I'm like, well, I'll be able to stand in this. And the pool ended up being 100 feet deep. And by that, I just mean you don't know what you don't know. And sprint car racing, dirt track racing is some people from like the pavement world that I come from look at dirt racing and they go, it's just simple going around in circles and there's not much to it. Try explaining a dirt racing format to somebody from IMSA or IndyCar. Try explaining the redraw wheel. Try explaining
Oh, no.
inverts. And so I didn't know any of that. And where it all came to a head, Jeremy, was like a few weeks before the season start. Levi Jones, then head of the USAC circle
Yep.
track division, goes, hey, why don't you swing by the shop in Brownsburg? Devin Berkeley, the producer, has got the Flow van all set up, and he's going to play at some heat races, and I want you to call him just to make sure we really know what we're getting here with you. And I'm like, great idea. Well, I called those heat races, and I wasn't Johnny Gibson by any means, but I sounded okay. Well, where I really wish Levi would have tested me and given me a few practice runs was qualifying, calling single car 2 lap qualifying. Because I had called thousands of laps before the year of USAC. Before 2021, I'd called thousands of laps of side-by-side racing, junior open wheel cars, Mazda sports, Mazda spec cars, IMSA sports cars, and thousands of go-kart races, right? Describing lap by lap racing was not hard for me. I had never sat down in a chair and been the only guy on the mic when a car goes out for 2 laps by himself. And because I didn't grow up going to sprint car races. I didn't grow up going to short track races. I didn't know the whole up next in the number 4 NOS Energy Drink, Top Motorsports, stand powered spike chassis out of Ione, California. Here is Justin Grant. And I didn't know that cadence that you rattle
Right.
everything off and
Right.
you throw in 3 sponsors, the chassis, the engine, the team owner, the car owner, the driver, and a couple of his accomplishments. So I didn't know that's what you did every single time a car hit the track. So if you go back and watch Bubba, which I can't bring myself to do, I break out in hives. Like Tanner Thorson or somebody rolls out for the first lap, and I just go, all right, qualifying getting going here at Bubba Raceway Park, and practice session all wrapping up, and next up on track, it looks like the first driver to take, and I'm just stomping my feet
Sure.
all over what people are expecting to hear. And I'll never forget, we went to commercial break after the first night of Bubba and qualifying ended. And I mean, Jeremy, it's just like doing this down the Twitter notifications of people, who is this guy? And Robert Ballou tweeted and said, did you guys find him in the bargain bin? And where's Rob
Oh,
Klepper? And the weekend after Bubba, the weekend between midgets and sprint cars, Jeremy, I'll have to show you sometime the emails that people in this sport sent me, comparing me to Rob Klepper and telling me that I wasn't ever going to be him, and USAC drivers' fathers. And I'm not talking about like midget kids that are 15, 16 years old. I'm
Right.
talking about I had sprint car drivers. They're in their 30s. Their fathers sending me text messages where I had to go like this to read all of it and telling me what I was doing wrong. So, and again, did I deserve it? Yeah, probably. I would have expected a little bit more decorum from certain people in the
Got a
sport.
little leniency past the first weekend.
Well, leniency is to be expected if you know the backstory, and nobody knew the backstory. Nobody knew that I was a guy who had been raised in pavement road course racing. They didn't.
Okay.
They just. I think they got mad at USAC, and then they got mad at me because they're like, how dare you abuse my ears with your lack of knowledge. I also, whether they would agree with this or not, I shoulder a lot of the blame on myself, and I've had 2 years to think about this. I mean, when I was at the Outlaws, when I met you, I don't make any bones about it. I did not want to be holding a camera for WRG for 2 years. I did that job because I thought it would get me back on a microphone sooner.
Sure.
I am grateful to Ross Weiss and Brian Dunlap for throwing me the rope and saving me from unemployment or not working in racing, period. I think you can be grateful for an opportunity, but still want more. I don't think those things are
Oh,
mutually exclusive.
I do it now with my deal. I mean, there's
Right.
things I do that I don't want to do, but I have to do, and so on and so forth. But did you make it the year at USAC?
No, I did. I did. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. And all I was saying with where I was going with that is I've had 2 years to think about this, and I shoulder a lot of the blame on myself because I was the guy that didn't know. I wish USAC would have done a little bit of their due diligence and dug into me a little bit more before just saying, okay, go, and throwing me out to maybe one of the most hostile fan bases.
That's to
Um,
say the least.
and it's crazy because there is a wild difference between the outlaw high limit winged sprint car fan
Absolutely.
and the USAC fan. They are a legacy fan. They are people whose families were fans and their dad's dad was a fan. And when you don't get the tradition of their kind of racing right, oh man, it is no holds bar on how they let you know.
But I think there's another part to that, and I'll shoulder this because I just they're also a group that feels left behind.
Mhm.
They're a group that feels, because I see this all the time. Oh, real sprint cars.
Yeah,
You know, well, start paying more than what you pay, and but no, you if you get me started, I'll go.
I know.
But they're a group. I love their passion, their tradition, like you said, but they're also a group that feels almost slighted. I think of their standing in the sprint car world.
I agree. And listen, will this get me in trouble? Maybe, especially considering who I'm working for these days. I love all kinds of sprint car racing, and the guys who I worked with at the Outlaws for the last 2 years will roast me and maybe go public with some of the things I said, maybe not, but like I still believe that non-wing sprint car racing, and I've never driven either one of them, right? I'm not a guy
Right.
that can tell you what it's like to race one versus the other, but just from an entertainment standpoint, and this is just me, I still look at non-wing sprint car racing as like, the most bang for your buck, entertaining craziness that you can pay to go see them. And midgets. People hate on midgets these days. I was just
Oh,
I was just talking to Brian Walker about this yesterday on our drive from Indy out here to Mechanicsburg. And I understand that midget racing has changed a lot from the days
yes.
of, we were watching the Brian Clausen movie on the drive up here yesterday, and it's changed even a lot from when Brian did it. Um, but I think midget racing and non-wing sprint car racing is the best, bang for the buck in a lot of ways. Now, does that make non-wing, I'm sorry, does that make wing sprint car boring or unattractive? No, not at all. I mean, you haven't lived till you've seen a wing sprint car rip around the top, pretty much anywhere in the country that we've gone. I mean, we were just in New York last weekend and watching those guys work around the top and tiptoe at Utica Rome was crazy. I mean, it's incredible. And you're right, you bring up the point of money. I mean, wing sprint car racing, you can make a lot of money doing it. And I want to make it clear that I don't think one's significantly better or significantly worse, but I grew up a Tony Stewart fan. The little bit of sprint car racing knowledge I had was all non-wing. And then I got my first year in dirt racing, period, was with USAC. So I have a big place in my heart for non-wing sprint car racing, and I hate that it doesn't pay. what I think guys like Justin Grant and Logan Seavey and Mitchell Moles and Brady Bacon, that I think those guys should be making. So yeah, I just, and the fan base there has been slighted. They get left behind, I think, almost every chance, because their cars don't have big giant barn doors on top of them, and it's so easy to identify a wing sprint car. I was so
Yes.
jealous. I was so jealous of Johnny Gibson when I started watching wing sprint car racing, because I thought, man, this guy can identify his cars so easily, and I'm out here looking for a tail tank on a midget that looks this big from a press box, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the '08, the '80, the '88, and I would miss call cars sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I don't want too much hate mail, but I feel for USAC, and I feel for the fans, and I feel for the teams and the drivers and the car owners, because it's an amazing form of racing, and it does not get the coverage or the respect that it deserves, I think. But that's, that's a topic for another time probably.
No wonder you defended him so much to me at Eldora. But
I love them, man. I love them. I think it's crazy cool. I know they're not as blindingly fast as a wing sprint car. Um, and I'm learning more. I've got to spend so much time this year in my role as a pit reporter talking to the crew chiefs, the mechanics, the tire guys, and I've learned a lot more about what makes a wing sprint car so cool and so crazy hard to get right, and so on the edge constantly. So yeah, I don't want, Brad or Kyle to watch this and go, oh wow, our pit
oh,
reporter
they
doesn't
won't.
like I well, I
Blame
don't want
me.
any I don't want anyone to watch it and think, oh, the pit reporter doesn't like wing sprint car racing. I do. I just also really enjoy non-wing sprint car racing.
I think there's room for both.
Yeah.
As much as I bag, now I don't say much about when it's midgets that I hate. Uh, you know, kitty cars on a kitty track.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, um, how difficult was that whole? Because I remember when I first met you, I even felt bad because Ross is just, man, he's brutal when he
Yeah.
gets on you about it.
Well,
But I felt bad, and I don't really feel bad for anyone. But but how hard was that whole experience? And then of course it ends. People, getting those emails, getting those text messages throughout the year. It just didn't work out. How tough was that for you? And at one point, did you think about saying, you know what, I'm done with dirt track racing?
it was super hard. And you asked if I made it through the whole year with USAC. I did. I made it to the Turkey Night Grand Prix, and I loved it, and I loved that whole year, and I loved the people I got to do that job with. Um and it all came out later. I get a call in December from Kevin Miller at USAC, and he lets me know that Chet Christner is going to come and be a part of the broadcast in 2022. But he doesn't say how. He just says Chet's going to be involved in the show next year. And my heart starts pounding, because I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because obviously Chet's a great announcer, and
Sure.
my number one fear is, well, he's going to replace me. But Kevin won't say anything. He won't tell me how he's coming back, and he just keeps, I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't know, I'm not sure. Well, I don't believe that the president of a major racing organization like that has moves get executed like that, but he doesn't know anything about them. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to get any information here. I need to go to the guy involved in it. So Chet was great. He was actually at Gateway in St. Louis setting up for the dome race out there, and he kind of, I think, could tell I was needing to talk pretty badly, so he stopped what he was doing and he called me, and we had a discussion. And it was again, in pretty blunt terms, just kind of put to me that he would be taking over the broadcast lead, and I would not be in that role. And then that was pretty hard. I was doing Christmas shopping in like the fashion mall, I think, in Indianapolis,
Oh,
and
no.
I had to like put down what I was purchasing, because I was like, I mean, it felt like I'd gotten kicked in the stomach, to be honest with you, because I just loved the job, Jeremy. I loved the job, and I loved what I got to do, and I felt like, oh my God, if this is all I did for the next 30 or 40 years, I've made it. So yeah, that got ripped away from me, and then as that month of December went on and I did my digging, I found out that decision had been made in like September. And I get it. If you're going to make a move, you got to make a move.
A
But
heads
what
up would have
really,
been nice.
yeah, the lack of heads up was really surprising to me. And it's, again, I compare this to a driver situation very, very easily. If you tell a sprint car driver or any race car driver, hey, it's December 3rd and you don't have a job, and that we're racing again in February, in less than 2 months from now, good luck. That guy's not going to have a great opportunity to find a seat. Is it impossible? No, but it's not probable. And that was my world. So, yeah, it was really hard. The hardest thing of all of it probably was the day that it went public that Chet was coming back. And they made the tweet, they made the social media blast from USAC. And in just, in just typical people on the internet, not really thinking or not really caring about, what they say. It wasn't just, yay, Chet's coming back. It wasn't just, this is awesome, we're excited for Chet. It was, thank God TLP voice is gone. Oh my, I mean, I got tweets and Facebook posts, and Indiana open wheel was always had a bullseye right here on the side of my head. And that was hard to just that day to just see all this wave of support for Chet, which he rightfully earned. He's a great announcer, but to see the cascading, almost equal wave, it felt like, of, oh my God, thank God that LaPorta guy is gone. That was really hard. And then the winter after that was just like super, super heavy. I claim I've never had a bad day in my life, Jeremy, even when I lost my mom. I've just had a lot of hard days, and that was one of them. And those days in December and January were hard. Because I thought, man, I finally found this thing I love doing more than any of the pavement road course stuff I did. And I felt like I belonged in it. And I liked the lifestyle. I liked the traveling. I liked eating at truck stops. I liked all of it. I love it.
Killing me.
I love it. A good Love's truck stop shower, baby.
Oh my God.
I love it. And I'm like, dude, this was my thing, and it's gone now. And as fate would have it, a few weeks later, WRG announces they're going to start a non-wing sprint car midget series. And I'm like, oh man, this might be one of those times God had something planned for me. And I do everything but sprint to downtown Indianapolis, and I meet with Brian Dunlap at PRI, and we have a behind closed doors meeting. And I expressed to him, hey, USAC just let me go. It's not public yet. I'd love to be involved with the extreme outlaw thing. And he kind of, he hears me out, and he goes, all right. He goes, we have had one other person already reach out, but he goes, you're high on the list of, at least in order, of people that have come to us. And I want to be very, very careful that I don't misrepresent the situation. I am not trying to say that anybody lied to me. Nobody at WRG led me on. They didn't lie to me. They didn't give me false information. That part needs to be clear. What did happen was I was told, hey, you might have an opportunity at this extreme outlaw announcer's position, but until we know that you do, and to get your foot in the door, that term was used all the time. Get your foot in the door, get your foot in the door, get your foot in the door. We have a series content producer, a video guy position open for the sprint car tour. If we get you on that, and there was all kinds of different language used, it might be easier to get you in the announcer position. Yep. Your foot's in the door. I have all these old text messages and things that I could go back and quote, but I don't want to pull them up right now. And I'm like, yeah, to get a better chance to be the announcer, sure, I'm in. And I sign on to do this thing. And it was a brand new created position. Ross had seen me do a little bit of work at the Chili Bowl with a video camera, and they wanted a guy to travel just with the sprint cars on the Outlaw Tour for the whole year and make stories, make content, make pieces. Sure. And I'm like, sure, if that gets me closer to being the extreme outlaw non-wing announcer, I'm in. So I apply for that job. I get interviewed. There were a few other applicants. I was very fortunate to be offered the position, and I accepted. And then, of course, there's no real mystery. The extreme outlaw announcer position doesn't come my way. Ironically enough, it goes to Rob Klepper, the guy that I had stepped in for. Definitely not replaced. I did not replace Rob Klepper. I stepped in for him when he left USAC. And I was a video guy for 2 years. And yeah, I mean, you joke about Ross being hard on me. Ross was hard on me, but it was also because people never saw what he had to deal with, which was me, bluntly, an asshole of an employee, constantly just bitching about what he was doing. And I have to give a ton of credit to Ross Weiss for not snapping and going, hey, nobody held a gun to your head. If you don't want to do this, just quit. he would let me go on and on and on about how, oh man, I used to be an announcer and I used to be somebody. And I never voiced all that to Ross because I thought he could snap his fingers and make it better. I was voicing it to Ross because it was therapy. I had to get it out. I had to say it. And unfortunately for Ross, he was most often the closest guy to me in those situations. And at Bristol in the spring of 22 and other races that summer, I mean, he just heard it constantly. And I think him kind of joking or clapping back at me a little bit was kind of his way of saying, hey man, like, you're here to do a job,
Yeah.
either go home or do the job, but I don't need to hear about what you used to be all the time. And it was, yeah, there were times where Ross made some pretty Ross
It
made
was
some pretty
great.
he made some pretty brutal jokes, and there were jokes that I would never repeat just because I would never want him to get to kind of get held up over it. But my overreaching point here that I hope people understand is that Ross Weiss was way more patient and way more understanding. Yeah, and he made jokes and he ribbed me a little bit, but it was probably his only way of saying, hey, let's steer Tony back on path here. He liked the video work I was doing. I'm no Tim Truex. I'm no Ross Weiss. I'm no Dylan Schiebel. Those guys are all incredible. I'm just able to press record and press stop record. Um, but yeah, Ross had to put up with a lot of, like, oh my God, for 2 years, he had to put up with an employee that was miserable. And I look back on it now and I feel terrible because he didn't want any of that. He was just giving me
Right.
a rope. He was just giving me a life raft to hold on to. And I was a freaking jerk about it. So, because if I don't work for Ross and I don't work for the Outlaws, I don't get in a room with Brad Sweet and tell him, hey, I really want to get back on the mic. I know you guys are doing something next year. How can I be involved? So God has a plan. God has a path for all of us, I believe. And I had to walk on a path for 2 years that I did not want to be on at all. But it worked out. And I'm very grateful to guys like Ross and Brian Dunlap for being patient with me, giving me rope to survive with, giving me a paycheck to live on. If it's not for WRG and healthcare and a full health plan, I don't get to go in and have both my hips replaced when I find out in the middle of 22 that I've got this unique health condition and both my hips were dying. Um, so it's just one of those things where you might really think you know what you want, know what you need, but we all could probably do a better job of sitting back and listening, and we're just waiting for God to take us where we're supposed to be according to him. And that's what WRG and the Outlaws taught me, was to just shut up, do what you're doing, do the best job you can, and just keep swinging as hard as you can, and maybe you'll get where you want to be when it's all said and done.
No, I thought, I learned a lot sitting there at Eldora, and Ross is a great guy.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun sitting there with you guys, but man, of course, then I jump in and just pile on because, well, that's what I do. But, but that being said, so the video work, is that what you went to school for? What
No.
did you go to school for? Is it one of these
I
things where you don't do what you went to school for, kind of like me?
well, you went to school to be like a male model or something, didn't you?
Right. Chippendale. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
actually, I finance. Now I
Oh
use it, I
yeah.
guess, some of it, I guess if running a business, but yeah, I don't do I
Well,
was
with all the money that I hear Sprint Car Unlimited is
oh
making,
yeah, sure.
at least you don't have to hire a finance guy to keep track of all that money
Right.
moving around.
Yeah, my
Um,
650 square foot apartment says otherwise.
hey, that's pretty cool. I moved out of a 400 square foot one just recently, so
Oh.
you don't have too much. I'd get lost in your apartment. Um, no, I went to college in Grand Junction, at Colorado Mesa, for mass communications, broadcast journalism.
Okay.
I didn't finish. I was too busy missing class going to races to announce. And it was one of those classic, well, you need 5 years experience. Well, I need the job to get the experience. Well, it was just
Yep.
taking a step back. I'm going to school to get all this experience to get a job in broadcast one day, but I was having to miss the school to go be on broadcasts. So I got like two and a half. I'm basically just halfway through. My your typical 4 year bachelor program, and I left because I was just wasting money and wasting time, and college was the best 4 years of my life, even though I only went to 2 years of it. Um, but yeah, I went to school for broadcast and mass communications. I remember vividly, we did take one class, and it was like, news journalism
Sure.
110, or video journalism, and I don't remember what it was, but we were basically given, cheap little handheld cameras, and it was go out, make a story, film an interview, film a few interviews, get some B-roll, and then come back to the Mac lab on campus and use Adobe Premiere to piece a video together. And I'm sitting there going, I am never, ever gonna know or need to know this. I
Right.
am I am never gonna be piecing together, the weekly news 30-second stories and putting B-roll over a talking head and then a lower third. I am never gonna need to know how to do that. So we were in pairs, and this random girl that I worked with did the whole project. I felt terrible. I think we got a B on it, which is way better than if I would have done it. And I didn't do a single thing in Adobe Premiere. And yeah, fast forward 7, 8, 9, however many years, and here's Ross Weiss sliding me a new MacBook Pro across the table at WRG, and he goes, "Your Adobe Premiere is already loaded onto that." And I'm like, I guess I should learn how to use that now. So yeah, the video stuff was just something I did one weekend out of the year at Chili Bowl. It was my way to go to the Chili Bowl and get paid for
Yep.
it. And I just did it because it got me to the Chili Bowl, and I wasn't a professional. I made videos for Justin Grant, Clinton Boyles, and stuff like that on the side. And then when my announcing got pulled out from underneath me, it became the only thing that got me to the racetracks. So yeah, the video thing I was not versed in, I was not very good at. And again, massive thank you to Ross Weiss and WRG for being patient with me, because they were getting videos the beginning of 2022 that were not very good. But Ross basically just said, let's give him time, or at least I presume he was. Maybe he was looking for another employee at the time, but he never found one. And he let me get better at it. So yeah, Ross's patience cannot be overstated at all.
High limit.
Mhm.
Okay. How does this opportunity come along? And then I got some rapid fires after that on kind of to take us full circle. But high limit, how do you end up with that gig?
Um, I knew that they were, I mean, it was the secret that wasn't really a secret last year, right?
Tell
Everybody,
me about it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Everybody knows, and thanks to sprintcarunlimited.com for bringing us all the up to date and in real time information. High limit's going to go national, and they're still going to have their midweek deal. And I'm thinking, man, I can't do another year of this video stuff. I can't do another year of watching Chase Rodman and watching Johnny Gibson and watching Blake and watching all these guys do what I really want to do. It was incredibly selfish and self-centered, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot watch other people do what I want. And I made a promise to myself going into 2023. If you don't have something lined up in dirt racing or in racing period at the end of this year, you are not coming back here to do video work. I just simply wasn't. I was 2 or 3 weeks away from going and applying. I had gone in and asked for an application at the Sportsman's Warehouse that had just opened up in Brownsburg, Indiana, to go sell fishing rods. I was not going to go back to doing video work. But a few months before that, all that news is starting to trickle out, and High Limit's going to go national, and it's going to be this big deal. And we're at not Chico. We might have been at Kings in California,
Mhm.
and it was that Placerville week. It was somewhere on the West Coast swing with no, it was Hanford. It was Hanford. We
Yep.
were in Hanford with the Outlaws, and I had been having conversations back and forth with Brad Sweets and Casey Kane Racing's PR coordinator, Dana McCarthy. And I just said, hey, how hard would it be to get some time with Brad alone? And she let Brad know that I wanted to speak to him and what it was about. And, one thing leads to another. And I'm in the front part of the 49 hauler at Hanford with all the doors up and closed and everything. And I went to Brad. That's another thing that should absolutely be understood here. There's a lot of people there who have this crazy conception. I see this term poached get thrown around all the time.
Ah, the old poach term.
Well, there's two things about that. One, to be poached, they have to come to you, all right? And at least in my position, that did not happen. And maybe this is a hot take, maybe this is, going to be controversial, but it's very hard to poach the willing. It is very, very hard to
It's a
poach the
very
willing.
interesting point.
Um, People, nobody on our crew was, had a gun pointed at him and said, you have to leave where you are, or we're going to kill you and your family. That didn't happen. Um, I went to Brad. I approached him and I said, I'm doing something that I'm grateful to have the opportunity, but it's not my life's passion. It's not my life's work. I want to get back on a microphone. I was like, dude, I've been the USAC lead announcer. I've done all these lead announcer positions. I would like to be the lead announcer, but I'm willing to do anything to get on the mic. If that's the infield pit reporter guy, whatever, right? I'll do anything. And I said, can I send you a resume and some letters of reference and a short talent reel I have? And Brad was very receptive. He said, yep, we'd love to look at all options, and we'll be making that decision once the season ends. And so, like 2 days later, I had an incredible letter, a letter of reference, letter of recommendation. That's what I'm trying to say. Johnny Gibson wrote me an incredible letter of recommendation. Now, I don't think he intended it to be used for high limit. He just basically did it because I asked him. I said, "Hey, I'm looking to move around and get back on a mic. Would you ever mind putting down a few words for me?" Johnny wrote an incredible letter for me that I'm grateful for to this day, 2 years later after getting it. And I go to Brad and I just say, hey, I really want to be involved in what you guys are doing next year. Not because I want to see the World of Outlaws crash and burn, not because I hate WRG, but because I want to be back on a microphone. And there was clearly no opportunity for that at WRG for me. So I knew that I would have to move on. So I approached Brad. I expressed that I wanted to be back on a mic. He heard me out. And the months go by and the winter's happening, and I obviously get a phone call and got to have a sit down talk with Mike Hess. And yeah, so I went to them. I approached them. There was no wicked witch of the East that flew into a World of Outlaws race and pulled people out and took them away. It
Stop.
was
Evil Empire too.
no, exactly. So yeah, I was very fortunate that Brad is a smart businessman who was willing to listen and not just write me off because I was with the competition or I was or because my previous track record. Brad was gracious with his time and he sat and he listened to me, and thankfully he was willing to bring me up to the group who made those decisions. So yeah, that's how High Limit got started.
How has your style changed? How much did that USAC and let me backtrack a little bit. I feel pit reporting is harder than PA because you don't know when it's getting thrown to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like I used to marvel at Chase in the pit, or actually, because what I do is I usually, people think I'm not watching, but I'm watching. I stand there and I kind of watch what's going on, and I watch Chase. He never knew when that was happening. I think what you're doing now is harder than, being on the mic up top. So how did you change your style after the USAC thing? Did you work on it? What was this whole experience like just to get ready for High Limit?
Yeah, it's funny because like I do love what I get to do now with High Limit and being down in the pits, and I love the fact that I get to straight up tell stories that if you're the lead play-by-play guy, you can't take a break in a feature or an 8 lap heat race and tell a 2 minute story about a guy because that ruins the flow of the call that you're doing. So I love what I get to do in the sense that I get to meet people in the pit area every single night, whether it's our 17 full timers, and I check in with them every night and I say, what's going on in your life? How are things? What's new? Or I get to meet the local contingent anywhere we go and say, hey, who are you? Can I tell I don't put it this, grandiose, but I like to explain to them, hey, I want to tell the people watching here at the
Right.
track and the people watching all around the world, I want to tell them about you. So tell me about you. I love that about this job. Do I still, wish it was me up there in the booth, either with Chase or instead of Chase? Yeah, absolutely. Chase is doing an incredible job. Chase has blown me away. I did not know what to expect when I knew that Chase was going to get the lead job. He has done so much better than I could have expected, and he's getting better every night. Again, that doesn't mean I can't wish it was me up there. Calling a race is super exciting. It's like being a driver in one, I think. You have to constantly be thinking. You have to always be ready. You can never take a lap off. That's what I miss about calling the races. So it's hard to say that there's been a style change because calling a race is a legitimate, just different job than reporting on a race. So if I were up in the booth or I had been the pit guy at USAC in 21 and I was doing the same thing now,
Right.
then I could maybe tell you about how styles have changed. I have just tried to slow down a lot in anything I do. I have tried to walk through the pits and have long conversations with people. I have tried to dig a little bit deeper than how's the car? What happened last night? Tell me about the car. I try to ask them about what's going on at home. How was the overnight drive? What happened? And you'd be amazed, just like I know you are already used to, when you ask just a little bit deeper than surface level, you get deeper than surface
Sure.
level answers. Marty Smith on ESPN is a guy that I heard do a podcast, and he is so good at his job of interviewing people and pulling stories out of people. I try to listen to what he does, and I just try to listen to other reporters in racing, in stick and ball sports, in just journalism like yourself, and I try to say, what do they do that I like, and then I try to replicate it or put my own little twist on it. But yeah, man, it's super cool to be in this position and get to tell more stories than just versus just describing the on-track action. I like doing both, but I'm very grateful to be in a spot where I am now, where I get to connect the human element of our sport to the broadcast a little bit more.
How difficult is it to juggle humor with informative broadcasting? That is a difficult. I mean, I have guys I like and guys I don't.
Yeah.
I'm a big Al Michaels guy, always have been. I'm a big Chris Collinsworth guy, even though he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but he says something. He's not afraid to call someone out. But then there's other guys I like, and there's guys their style doesn't fit. How do you juggle that to be a little funny, a little humorous with being informative?
That's a great, I mean, that's probably one of the best questions pertaining to just, me. And I don't know if you have more kind of, I don't know what backstory you have to ask or context you have to ask that question, because that's a topic that's a tightrope that I've kind of had to walk my entire career. So it's, that's a great question personally, because my whole career, from being a junior in high school, announcing the local go-kart race in Erie, Colorado, where the only people there watching on the fence were the parents, the kids on the track, or the wives and the girlfriends of the guys out on track, to getting to be the guy in victory lane at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, introducing Elio Castroneves and Fernando Alonso and Indianapolis, or the BC 39 or Port Royal or Williams Grove. I've gotten to hold microphones at all these really cool places. And I've always had to walk that tightrope of, okay, this is a big stage. Or maybe it's not a big stage. Maybe it's some podunk go-kart race in the middle of nowhere. But it's not stand-up comedy hour. And I love either. Some people would tell you I love to try to be funny. Maybe I'm not that funny, but I love to try to be funny. I think if you can make someone laugh, you get them to connect and team up with you so much quicker. So much quicker.
Very true.
So I always prefer to go the funny route, right? And I think I'm good at it, but I definitely, I'm not always the stand-up comic that I want to be. But yeah, you walk this super tightrope of funny versus serious, because I think, just like I said, you can really get someone to team up with you and buy into you and what you're doing if you can make them laugh. I think it goes the exact opposite way, and you can absolutely turn somebody off, lose them, make them never want to watch what you do again if you're boring and you're dry and you're too serious. I struggle with that, Jeremy, all of the time. I'll literally be interviewing a guy after a heat race, and I'll have the mic in his cage. Tim Crawley gets I think he won his heat race. I know he got into the dash back at the ditch in West Memphis. And Tim Crawley, I stick my mic in there and I said something general like, "Hey man, that was a great heat race. How do you feel after being out of the car for that long?" And he makes some comment that I won't get verbatim, but he goes, "Man, my fat ass is out of shape. I need to get into the gym."
Yeah, I remember this.
And as he's answering that, this is what I wish people knew about Chase and Johnny and Brian Holbert and all of us that hold microphones and do this. while we're listening to that answer, 1,000 things are going off in our brain at that time. What's the follow-up question? Do I have time for a follow-up question? What do I say as an answer to that? Maybe somebody's talking to us in our ear, telling us something. There's 1,000 little discussions happening in our head at those times. And in my head, that moment, Tim Crawley's going, man, my fat ass is out of shape and I need to get into the gym. And I'm thinking, make a joke. Take it back when he's done. It's a one question heat interview. When you take it back, make some joke. Talk about, oh man, Tim Crawley out of shape. I can relate. Or Tim Crawley out of shape. Man, now he knows how I feel. Something. But just as quick as you have that thought, you're going, no, it's not stand-up comedy. You're going to piss people off. They're going to think you're making a joke out of him or the broadcast. Keep it straight. And then you're going, well, can I do both? Can I make it a little funny and a little serious? And then the next thing you know, he's done talking.
Yeah.
And you take the mic back and you have to have something to say. And in that specific instance, I just played the straight and narrow. And I just said, Tim Crawley's going to be in the dash or something, right? And I kicked myself after that. I said, man, that's not you. That wasn't funny. That wasn't memorable. Don't do that again. And a night or two later, another heat race interview, and a guy said something along those lines of, man, I'm in here. I'm out of breath. I'm shaking. My butt is out of shape. And I took the mic back and I said, maybe it was Brent. Maybe I don't remember who it was, but I said, oh, so-and-so feeling tired, out of breath and out of shape. Kind of just like me when I walk up the stairs to the press box. Chase, back to you. And it made Chase laugh on the broadcast. I heard other people say it made him laugh. So it is a battle that I have constantly of, is this too funny? Does it make people think I'm not taking it seriously? But if I don't, am I going to come off too boring, too dry? Is there anything that makes this broadcast a little bit better than this group or that series or this broadcast? So, man, that is a battle that I wage inside my head constantly over what's too funny and what's too serious. And can I find a spot right here in the middle?
I can tell you from my standpoint, I do the same writing. When do you have a one-liner in an opinionated column? I did it the other night. I can tell you this interview, I'm already thinking about the growth.
Yeah.
I know what I want to ask. And now I have the luxury of 27 years of interviewing people. So
Yeah.
it's not that I'm not interested. I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
But it's easy for me to do that. I can't imagine being in the pit area and something happened and it's thrown to you and you don't know it's coming. There's no preparation. You're off the cuff. And not only so you're dealing with the humor and the informative, you have old fans and younger fans. Older fans tend to like the straight, serious. Younger fans want a little levity.
Yeah.
So it becomes this. Racing is very difficult with that.
Well, and you just kind of triggered a thought that in 2021, we're at Terre Haute for the week of Indy, the Holman. I believe that's the race that was going on that week of Indy. And Brady Bacon in his heat race has a terrible barrel roll, flips out through turn number one, and he gets super high up in the air and he flips out of the racetrack completely. And in that split second, Jeremy, one of those moments that you just described happens where it's like, how do I play it straight and narrow? Do I make it a little funny? Because if you've ever been to Terre Haute or you even know the view from the top camera, I don't know, 200, 300 yards past turn one, off in the distance at Terre Haute is a Chick-fil-A. And we can see that Chick-fil-A in the monitor from the camera
I know
angle
where you're going
as Brady's flipping. And in a split second, because I always try to be funny, I try to be on my toes, I think about saying, Brady Bacon flips out of the ballpark in turn one, and he's going to be the first in line at the drive-thru in Chick-fil-A. And he lands, and I don't say that because in my head I think, you have no idea if he's okay or not.
Well, yeah.
That's a terrible accident. And if, God forbid, he is hurt, and it doesn't even have to be a serious injury, if he's hurt at all, or even worse, if it is serious, that clip will get replayed for years. And the first thing people are going to hear when they see that clip of Brady Bacon breaking his arm, breaking his back, God forbid anything worse, they're going to hear the announcer making a stupid joke about him being in the first in line at Chick-fil-A. And I don't say that story as a cautionary tale to never be funny, to never make a joke. But you have to just really, I don't know, it's one of those split second things where it's like, do you throw the ball right now and risk the interception, or do you wait and risk getting sacked? It's those kind of moments where you're like, you have to really be confident in what you're going to say. because those words, and with everything being streamed these days and everything being living on the internet forever, you say the wrong thing. And believe me, I've said the wrong thing dozens of times. I'm sure Johnny can tell you stories. Chase, all of us have said things that live on the internet that we wish didn't. And that was a moment where I, for once, I held back and I thought, man, I'm glad I did. The best part of the story is Brady Bacon was fine. He got up, he got out of the car, he raced through the B, and he was in the A later that night. But
I think he top
that's
fived it.
yeah, I think he did. He might have even podiumed if I'm being
Yeah,
if
I
if
think
I
he was
think about
third.
it. But it's like those are the things that go on inside my head millions of times a night. And it's just like, do I say this? Do I wait? Do I say it like this? Do I hold back? Do I not say it at all? Do I ask another question? And so, yeah, man, that's the toughest part of this job, is just trying to decide, when do you play it serious and appease the older crowd, but risk turning off the younger folks that are just going, man, this is boring. This is dry. I could just mute this and not worry about it. And then saying something engaging and quippy and funny and making people laugh, but then possibly, because everybody gets offended over everything today. You cannot do anything in this world without offending somebody. Everybody is out to get offended. So you have to you have to tiptoe around those minds. It feels like all the time.
Yeah, I mean, totally understandable. Last couple things is, how happy are you now? Just to be
Oh,
back doing what you're doing.
Oh, it's crazy, Jeremy. It's crazy. I mean, I noticed it at the Chili Bowl in January this year, and I went out there to do video work. I went out there to do a lot of video work. I had 7 cars I was making videos for at the Chili Bowl, and we had wanted to sit on it and get through the Chili Bowl and not go public. I have this terrible habit of like sitting on news that should be out there way sooner because I don't know how it's going to be received. And it was a combination of WRG finding out when they did, because I told him, I went to him. I didn't want to get to 2 weeks before the season and tell WRG, oh, by the way, I'm out. I didn't think that was fair. My dad's owned a small business my whole life, and I've seen what it's like to be an employer and depend on people. And most of the time they just screw you. So I did not want to be that shithead employee who just cold call or no showed on WRG. They didn't deserve that. So I get a hold of them and I tell them what's going on. And again, to Ross and everybody over there's credit, they were very fair to me. They were super fair, more fair than I would have been to me, if I'm being honest. And it goes out. Walker makes the post on social media the day before I fly to Tulsa, and I'm just walking through the expo center, Jeremy, and I'm waving at people and they're waving at me, and people are coming up and they're congratulating me and they're fist bumping me. But I mean, I didn't think I'd be able to tell. I mean, I thought about that question you just asked, where I'm like, okay, will I know when things are different? Like, will I be able to tell? And I felt like just lighter walking around the expo center at the Chili Bowl, because I was like, I get to do what I want to do again. So, yeah, I mean, I'm way happier. I do want to add this one little caveat to it. My 2 years at WRG, between the hours of 5 p.m. and like 11 p.m. on race days, basically when cars were on track and I was having to actually work, I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't want to be there holding the camera. I didn't want to be walking 8 miles a night and burning up in the summer, freezing in the spring. I didn't want to be a video guy. But that was the only time I was miserable, was between the times of engine heat and the checkered flag waving on the feature. The 2 years I had at WRG were so unique because I wasn't stressed out about what I was doing professionally. I didn't care. So I was able to be so loose from 2022 and 2023. I went out and I did stuff I could have never done when I was announcing full time. I'd stay out the night before a race. We'd go hit all these baseball stadiums in 2022. I couldn't do that this year or previously, because I'd be worried about, sitting here doing what I'm doing right before we got on this call, and it's making notes, it's preparing for the broadcast, it's trying to do good at what I enjoy. So 2022 and 2023 were weird in the sense that I didn't enjoy what I was doing professionally, but I loved almost every other part of my life more than I ever had, because I was stress free. I had a job. If I got that killer shot of a car wheelie and come out of turn 4, great. If I didn't, I don't care. Like, I'm not a video guy. I don't live and die by this stuff. But I was still able to focus on my work when I was there. I thought I made good stuff, and I was able to go hit all these baseball stadiums, visit national parks with the Outlaw staff that I traveled with. We had so much fun. Brian Walker when he was there, Jake Ingram, the signage guy, Alex Neaton, who took over for Brian in 2023, a lot of the over the road staff. And I got to do so much cool stuff that probably gets lost in how people think I hated my life those 2 years. I didn't hate my life. I just didn't love what I was doing.
You're a freelancer.
Yes, this year, technically, I am a contractor.
So do you do stuff on the side outside of what you're doing with High Limit, and what is it?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff on the side. I walked away from, I don't remember exactly what I was making at WRG, but it was the most money I'd ever made, in racing easily. And I stepped away from that to come be a contractor, and just make a very different lifestyle for myself because I love what I'm doing. And so to fill the gap, from being a twice monthly paid salary, full health care, full benefits that I got when I was at WRG, to make up for that, yeah, I've had to really fill my time doing some other stuff. I still do a lot of video work. And it's a lot easier to do video work these days when I know that I'm going to go back to holding a microphone at the end of the week or at the end of the month. I think that's the thing that catches a lot of people off guard. They go, well, you just got done bitching about video work for 10 minutes on Jeremy's show, and then you talk about doing video work. Well, it was different. And this was what I always tried to make Ross understand was making videos is cool. And it's a fun itch to scratch creatively right up here.
That's
But
when
I
you
didn't
have
want,
to do it.
well, exactly. It's when you have to do it and when it's the only thing you're known for. I didn't share more than 7 or 8 videos I made over the 2 years I worked at WRG because I didn't want people to label me as just this, right? I wanted
Right.
people to think of me as he can do this with a camera, he can do this with a microphone, he can do this and that and the other. So, to fill the time when I'm not working with High Limit to make up and kind of just pad my pocket a little bit, I do video work still for TSR. I plan to do some video work for Donnie and the 15 car of Tony Stewart Racing in March. I was very fortunate to get to go and be asked to be the videographer to make a behind the scenes video about Tony's debut weekend in Top Fuel at the NHRA opener in Gainesville, Florida. I got to make a 4-day, 2-part behind scenes documentary, not documentary, but video, following Tony Stewart, who I discussed earlier in your show as my childhood idol. I got to follow that guy around for 4 days at Gainesville. I got to make a video for him and Leah at PRI in December announcing he was going to be in the car. So all of a sudden I look up and I'm working for Tony Stewart Racing and I'm working for Tony directly. I do video stuff on the side for groups like that. I do video stuff for small businesses in Indianapolis when I'm home and I have the time. And then I announce anything and everything people will hire me for if it's not a high limit conflict. I announce lots of different stuff. I'm an ordained minister. I'm going to Colorado in a few months to officiate a wedding. I got a couple weddings lined up in the winter. Those don't usually pay. I do them for friends, and it's an honor to be asked. But yeah, I do a lot of stuff to make ends meet when because just like these drivers, when we get rained out and we don't race, I don't get paid, which you got to find ways to kind of help yourself out in those situations. But yeah, I'm a contractor this year and I try to fill the gap however I can. Did some announcing for karting in the January, February, March, the Florida Winter Tour. I was their announcer. So yeah, I just try to fill in the open weekends however I can.
Well, you're doing a good job with High Limit. I'd tell you if you weren't, you know that.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I just want people to be honest. That's the
Yeah,
end of
no,
the
I think you're doing a good job. I can't remember you on the mic at USAC
good.
because because well, I don't watch a lot of USAC,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think you were at BAPS. You might have been at BAPS,
Yeah.
and I was there. Like I said, I have nothing against wing sprint car racing midgets and Silver Crown. I don't have time for that, but
Oh, crown
but
racing is awesome.
you don't know. But nevertheless, you're doing a good job. I appreciate you joining us on the show. I appreciate your candor with you. You've definitely had a topsy turvy in and around path, and that's led you back to what you like to do.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeremy, and it's funny because yeah, you put a real blunt question out there. Just are you, how happy are you, or are you happier these days? Yeah, I am, and I need to just say that a big part of it is, I think, as who I get to work with, right? And I'm trying to kind of, follow in your footsteps and start my own interview show. And I did one with Zeb Wise a few days ago, and he talked about, one of the best parts of this lifestyle is if you're friends with everybody out here, you get to spend time pretty much your whole year with your friends. And it's weird because when you work with people that you're friends with, our lifestyle is so different out here. I get to work with guys that I worked with at the Outlaws, Brian Walker, Anthony Creaney, and Chase Rodman. That's our travel group. The four of us are always in a rental car and in hotels together. But the entire High Limit staff, right, is just full of super hardworking people. And they have to be, because this is not a big, 60, 70 person company with a road crew that just does the road events and an office crew. No, this is a group of people that, from Mike Hess and Kendra Jacobs to JP and the Nouse family. I mean, Callie, everybody that travels with High Limit, I have been so impressed with their work ethic. And it makes it genuine. I mean this when I say it, it makes it easier for me to show up to the track and go, damn, there's Kendra and there's Callie hanging banners, and there's, Trent and Cody and the Nouse family and Mike down in the infield at 11 a.m. putting up A-frames and signage. Once I'm done helping them, I can't just take it easy till we go live. I better be going up and down the pits doing my job. I better be getting notes. I better be learning things. And it is one of the coolest staffs, maybe the coolest staffs I've ever worked on here at High Limit, because everybody here works harder than hell. And they do it, I believe, because they have a vision of this thing being awesome. So I'm grateful that Brad and Kyle and Mike and the folks that were involved in bringing me on, approved me, because yeah, I love what I'm doing, but I also feel like I get to be a part of one of the hardest working staffs in racing there is, period. So, thanks for letting me talk about it a little bit and having me on the show, man. I love what you're doing, and these conversation pieces, like I said, I'm trying to do more of them myself. And I'm grateful to be asked to be on yours. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. And we will see you this weekend at Port Royal.
Yes, sir, baby. The Weichert. I am battling borderline depression because I haven't missed an Indianapolis 500 since my first one in 2016. If you can't tell, I'm thinking about it. But to get to go to a race like the Weichert and see $75,000 get paid out, that's pretty cool. And also I'm, maybe looking at the radar, and Indianapolis looks like it might race on Monday. So who knows what happens there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being out there and seeing you. Maybe you can lace up the dunks and we'll play a little we'll play a little one-on-one or something. How about that?
Hoop it up. Yeah, I think I'll be shooting from outside.
Hey, ball is life, and ball don't lie.
Yeah. And you're 6'3" and I'm 5'6".
Yeah, but I'll take my sneakers off, dude. I mean,
It's not gonna help.
We can have a way more fair game if I take off or I'll leave one shoe on and play with a shoe and a sock. How about
See, that I like. You play one barefoot, one you'll be like the caddy in Happy Gilmore.
Just because I'm tall, though, don't be confused. I cannot dribble. I cannot walk and move a basketball at the same time. So within at least the rules of the NBA. So I can travel like a son of a gun.
Well, they do that in the NBA now, so
I don't watch, so I couldn't tell you. The NBA for me is like midget racing for you. I just don't know what's going on.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeremy. We'll talk to you soon.
That's going to wrap up this edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Thank you to Tony LaPorta for being on the show. A lot of good stuff there. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and also check out our daily exclusive content at www.sprintcarunlimited.com. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Deep Dive.